Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. So today I'm showing you how I created this house in The Sims 4, which is inspired by The Last of Us. So I wanted to go for sort of a townhouse because I am building this in Britechester, which is from the Discover a University pack. The lot that I chose to build this on is Honeydew Fields, so it's quite a big lot. So I decided to do two townhouses next to each other so that they're like attached together, and then it will sort of blend together very nicely, which you'll see happen later. I also added these little indents, I guess like balcony style bits to the house. I don't know how to explain it, but you can sort of see what I'm doing. Just adding a little bit of shape to the house so they're not just like completely square. I also took the basement tool to the front of the house and then removed the ceiling to create these little like basement bits that are open so I can put some stairs going down there. It's basically like a London townhouse, think London. Added some wallpaper and then moved on to the roofing, which I did as a double roof so that I could add a little bit in between. I wanted to add some like features to the sides and the middle to like sort of break it up. It doesn't make sense when I explain it, but visually it makes sense. So what I did is took a half wall and then sort of staggered the wall so there's different heights to it and it goes up into the middle. It just creates this nice extra little bit of feature and just breaks the houses up. This did take some playing around with until I was happy with it. I needed to make it all like match so it was the same on each little bit. I probably could have just copy and pasted it, but whatever. So I did just play around with it for a while until I got it looking exactly how I wanted. Then added some chimneys because it wouldn't be a London townhouse without a chimney. And I had to use the TLOU mod on this as well just to get them in the right place because they were kind of sitting on the half wall, which I did not want. I wanted them to sit on the roof, so just had to use the TLOU mod on this bit. Okay, so this is where I actually start to make it look like it's a damaged rundown house. I started adding this trimming, but I was breaking it up so that there was gaps in it and it looks like half of it had been like demolished or crumbled over time because we also need this to look very rundown and overgrown if it's an apocalypse style house. So I just sort of played around with that. You'll see me going like to it and back to it as I go through this build, just because I really wanted it to be like perfect. And also destroyed some of the walls, so I added in some half walls, added in some gaps just because again it's a crumbling building, so I needed there to be like gaps in the walls. Another little tip for the trimming is that if you hold down the shift key, it will just select the bit that you're on, because typically if you go to put some trimming down, it will put it all around the room that you're on or all around the building. So if you hold down the shift key, it will allow you just to place it into the little space that you want. Moving on to the fencing, I added in this one from the Vampires pack and just chose the colour that looked kind of run down and a little bit dirty, and also added these onto these little like balcony bits and just made it broken so that it looks like, again, it's crumbling. And then back to the trimming, I noticed that there was some sort of awkward gaps where I'd put the half walls and the gaps, so I just used some trimming to kind of cover that a little bit. Time to start adding in some actual decoration onto the doors and the windows. I went for these ones just because you can make them look slightly run down, and these ones from the Vampire packs are very like Victorian, very London style. And then I just chose the kind of beige colour because it looks the most dirty. Unfortunately, I don't have any windows that are like apocalypse style or broken or like boarded up, so I had to work with what I've got, and this is what I found worked the best. And on the side, I used these Discover University ones. I sort of placed them randomly so that it's not overly neat, because I don't want this build to be like neat at all. It needs to be organised chaos. And then I remembered about like the vines and the ivy and stuff that can be placed on the wall. So I use this one from the Vampire pack. I do use a lot of stuff from the Vampire pack on this one, but I use this one just because they do look a little bit more thorny and rotten and run down, and I just place these sporadically across the build just to give it that overgrown vibe. I did just place it down in the original colour, and then I do go back in and change some of them to the green colour just to add a bit of variation, so it's not just all one shade and that there's a little bit of like depth going on. And time for stairs. I just added these like bricky ones, just going straight down into those basement bits. And then started on the paths. I went for this brick one. I like to make my builds, like if I do paths like this, to match the street as best as possible, just so it blends in very nicely. And then I just deleted some squares to add an overgrown vibe and be able to add bits of grass in there. I also added this extra path in as like a walkway to the doors. I just thought it looked nice to have a bit of variation in there. And then onto the grass and the greenery and the plants and stuff. I started with these corner bits of ivy. I thought they looked really cool, and there was also some flat ones that I could put on the front and the back of the building. They just add variation, so it's not just the vines that I put in earlier. And then I do also end up going in with some of the cottage living, I think it is, the ivy clumps from that pack as well. And then adding some plants to the floor and to these path gaps. I just used different grass, different types of grass, different shades of grass, and also just like sized these up and down to just add some variation and just make it look more 3D and actually realistic. Also allowed myself to be a bit reckless with any bits of grass that I put against the walls, because it doesn't matter if it glitches into the house, because there's going to be grass growing inside the house as well. Also remembered about these wall decals from Vampire Pack. Again, a lot of vampire stuff in this one. Like the broken bits of wall, the cracks in the wall, and just literally added these everywhere, all over the build. I literally bought the Strangerville pack for this build, because look at this like aeroplane wing and these car bits that they just fit the vibe. I was like, I need this pack. If I'm doing an apocalypse build, I need this pack. So yeah, I finally bought this pack, and yeah, it just fits it so perfectly. They also have the little plants, like the mutant plants, which again, The Last of Us, they have like all the cordyceps and the mushrooms. So it just fits the vibe perfectly. And the oil barrels, they are going everywhere in this build, everywhere. And the little oil spill decals that I was able to put on the floor look really cool as well. The broken sign is also really awesome, but I do end up deleting that later. I don't know if I should have, but it does fit the vibe. And then also a caravan and some like rusted gates, some rusted fencing, just to make it look like people have been like living there. It still needs to look lived in, even though it's like an apocalypse build. It needs to look like people are trying to survive there and yeah, trying to protect themselves. And here are all those plants I was talking about that I'm just adding in. They just look really cool. I just resized them, add different colours, making it look like they've started to grow around this building. I literally love BB move objects for this whole reason. Like, I could make this plant look like it's growing out of this car shell, and I think that just looks really cool. And then I found this graffiti, which just fits the vibe. It's also worth mentioning that I am also using debug and live edit in this. It's definitely worth looking into if you've never heard of that before, because you get like loads of extra items, and it's not custom content or anything. It's literally like what they use in the world that you can't access. Like any trees and stuff you see in there, you can get it in there. You just have to activate it or have the Twisted Mexi mod that allows you to automatically see it. 100% worth it. You can see that I'm in the live edit menu right now, and I also found these mushrooms. We need mushrooms. If it's going to be Last of Us inspired, we need mushrooms. So I just added these everywhere. And I also just kept sporadically adding in like plants, flowers and stuff to just bulk it out and just give it that more overgrown vibe. I did end up using a lot of packs in this build just because I needed all of it. I needed to be able to access everything that was going to make this look like it was abandoned, run down, overgrown, you know, apocalypse style. So I did end up using a lot of packs in this. I tried to minimize them, but yeah, there's a few. And also terrain paint, I used this muddy grassy one from the base game and just added that literally everywhere. Just gives more depth to that grass, makes it look like it's, you know, been stood on a lot and it's not like fresh grass. We don't want this to look fresh. Okay, moving on to the basement and a bit more of the interior. I added these doorways and put these fencing bits in front because we want it to look like it's been blocked off so that no zombies or infected people or anything could get down there. And then I also just expanded the basement because we're going to make a basement room that somebody's like living in and has like secured themselves in. For the interior, I just used the brick pattern on the walls and then used some wooden flooring throughout, just made it consistent throughout. And I also started to add holes into the flooring, so I just put a platform down and then deleted that and it would just instantly add a hole into the flooring. And on the top level, I just completely wiped a side of the flooring so there's only one side of it. And deleted some of the interior walls to make it look like they had crumbled. And as mentioned earlier, I was just started adding like grass and greenery and vines, ivy, all that stuff inside the house to make it look like it had just grown and Mother Nature has just taken over. For stairs, I didn't want them to look like they were the natural ones from the house. I wanted them to look like they'd been built after the apocalypse. So I just added these in and also added some down to the basement because basically the vibe is going to be that the inside of the house had originally been used in the apocalypse, but it got taken over, so they've had to move down into the basement. That's what I'm going for. That's the lore behind the house. Okay, and then moving on to the bunker basement, I just started to basically decorate this. So added in some lighting, used a lot of off-the-grid stuff so that this could actually be used without power, because that literally makes sense. It's essentially going to be like a little studio apartment in a basement. So we've got a kitchenette, we've got beds, and then there's going to be a little seating area. Very minimal, but got everything that they sort of need. Used the camper beds to fit the vibe because obviously they're not going to have anything too fancy in this house. It needs to be all this kind of basic, very cheap stuff, maybe even the sort of rundown stuff from city living. So that's what I was going for. I also kind of wanted to go for the vibe that maybe the person that was living down here was like working on like a cure or something. So I did add some of the like lab stuff in from Strangerville pack, just because I thought that made sense that maybe they'd be living down there and like trying to work on fixing the apocalypse. I just basically kept jigging this area around until it could fit everything in that I needed and that I wanted. So it is a little bit chaotic, but I did get there in the end. Wanted to make it look like it had been as lived in as possible, so added a lot of clutter and also added the paintings so that maybe they've tried to like make it a little bit of a brighter place, try and just liven it up a little bit. This is a sort of scientific gear that I was talking about previously that I added, just to make it look like they're working on it. You know, they're trying to fix the situation. I wanted the other levels of the house to maybe look like that's where the base had originally started, so I added in some like clutter, some barrels, some scientific stuff, lots of beds. Like maybe there was a group of people and then something happened and it ended up dwindling down until there was 2 people and they moved to the basement. That's sort of what I was going for. There's a lot of, I thought of a story behind this house. And of course had to just gate off that stairwell just so that they were safe down there as much as they can be. And that is this build completed. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it helped to inspire you with an apocalypse style build for The Sims. If you would like to download this, it is on the gallery. I will put my gallery ID on the screen for you right now. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye!